news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a heat warning, 21 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. It feels like 28. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau will break away from the federal election campaign in about a half an hour from now to join other G7 leaders for talks on Afghanistan.
Justin Trudeau has faced criticism for moving too slowly to rescue Canadians and Afghan citizens who helped Canada carry out its military mission in Afghanistan. Today, a bit of a distraction. Trudeau joins his G7 counterparts to talk about the chaotic and in some cases deadly exit from Afghanistan by U.S. forces. The Liberal leader has also been slammed for calling an election just as the Taliban was washing across Afghanistan in a return to power that has shocked the world. As Canada joins the effort to evacuate those considered at risk from Taliban retributions, it's not clear whether Trudeau will join other leaders in calling for an extension of the August 31st deadline for American troops to complete their withdrawal from Kabul. Terry Pedro, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
City News Time at 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Heat warning continues. It's another humid day. Lots of sunshine. High 32 degrees will feel like 38. Tonight, mainly clear, 19. And tomorrow, we'll start with some sunshine, then increase the cloud, showers and scattered thunderstorms after 5 o'clock tomorrow. High 33, feeling like 40. For today, the high 32.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 22. It feels like 28. The pollsters are gauging voter support for the first full week of the federal election campaign, and two new polls out show the Conservatives closing the gap with the Liberals. Here's City News reporter Laura Carney.
Polls by the Angus Reid Institute and Ipsos both put the Liberals and Conservatives in a statistical tie. The Ipsos poll for Global News shows the advantage the Liberals had heading into the campaign just over a week ago has all but evaporated. If an election were held tomorrow, Ipsos says the Liberals would have 33% support, the Conservatives 32%, and the NDP in third with 21% support. In this seat-rich province, the Conservatives have actually taken a 4-point lead over the Liberals. Angus Reid's polling very similar, giving the Liberals 33% support, the Conservatives 31%. Still favoring the Liberals is a poll by Abacus data. It puts them slightly ahead of the Conservatives by 4 points. The NDP remain in third. I'm Laura Carney.
City News Time at 9:02. The Ottawa Police Service asking for help. They're trying to find a missing 84-year-old woman. Heather Wharton is white, 5'5", a medium build with short gray hair. She was last seen wearing a purple blouse and pants, and that was at about 5 o'clock this morning in the area of Elmira and Cobden in the west end of Ottawa. If anyone has any information or you think you spot her, you're asked to contact Ottawa Police. A fire on Riverside Drive near Mooney's broke out early this morning. Firefighters called to a vacant house just after 4 o'clock. Now, flames were visible from the second story of that building. Firefighters had to force their way into the boarded-up building and knock down that fire. A search of the entire home found there was no one inside. Crews had to remain on scene to check for any remaining hotspots in the walls and ceiling and to ventilate the smoke as well. Emperor Naruhito took part in the opening ceremony for the Paralympic Games in Tokyo, featuring the national flags of 162 countries that are taking part. The judo athlete Priscilla Gagne of Sarnia carried the Canadian flag into the stadium. The theme of the circus-like opening with acrobats and clowns, vibrant music and fireworks was "We Have Wings." Tokyo and the Paralympic organizers are under pressure from soaring new infections of COVID-19. Daily case counts in Tokyo increasing 4 to 5 times since the Olympics opened back on July 23rd. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The polls. Another new day. Federal election campaign. Fresh polling data. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Going to cover a lot of territory between now and noon. We're so happy you're along for the ride. The polls. Let's start with Abacus data. David Coletto from Abacus data is going to be on our show later on. New polling data from Abacus this morning. And it is. The Liberals in the lead. The Liberals in the lead. It is not a tie. The Liberals are in the lead, and it's a 4-point lead. Abacus has the race breaking down this way. Liberals, 33. Conservatives, 29. NDP, 23. Now, on the bright side for the Conservatives this morning is a more favorable view of the leader. Aaron O'Toole, his so-called favorables, are up by 6 points. Abacus says O'Toole and Singh clearly won the first week. They're the big winners as well in this poll. A lot of people say they could change their mind. 40% told Abacus they could still change how they intend to vote. Those who identify as conservative, they're the most committed. Okay? I'm voting conservative. My mind is made up, and there's nothing Justin Trudeau can say to change it. Not so for the New Democrats. Okay? More New Democrats are on the fence. And that could work to the Liberal advantage. Okay? The pitch to those soft New Democrats, the pitch for them from Trudeau is going to be this. Look, Mr. Singh is a nice guy, okay? But you can't vote for him because he's not going to win. And if you're like me, you just can't stand the very idea of the Conservatives in power. So vote for the Liberals. In fact, I think Mr. Trudeau is now banking on that. But on the other hand, what might keep Liberals up at night? The number of voters who say it's time for a change. This number seems high to me. According to this poll, 71% say, I'm ready for change. It's time for a change. And look, if you're Mr. Trudeau, you're not the shiny new thing anymore. You're not the new kid on the block anymore. You've been around for 6 years. Okay? You are establishment now. You're not the fresh face anymore. You're not the agent of change. David Coletto a little later in the program from Abacus. Very interesting trends in this poll. Still, if you're in the Conservative campaign, you have to face the fact you're at 29%. You're not winning anything if you're at 29%. But polls, I love the polls, even if polls are for dogs, okay? New poll out from Ipsos, done for Global News. It's a dead heat, says the headline. It's a dead heat. Election campaign tightens. Liberal campaign stalls. It has the race looking like this over at Ipsos. Liberals, 33. Conservatives, 32. NDP, 21. Now, in battleground Ontario, vote-rich Ontario, seat-rich Ontario, it's the Conservatives in the lead. You couldn't say that just a few weeks ago. You couldn't say that a month ago. A month ago, there were columnists wondering if Aaron O'Toole was going to be able to win his own Ontario riding. Remember that? Now, Ipsos has the Conservatives back in the lead at 35. Liberals, 31. And the NDP, 23. And you know who Justin Trudeau was talking about today? I thought there was a truce. Justin Trudeau mentioned Doug Ford today.
Even Doug Ford has said that he'll make vaccines mandatory for some essential workers. Look, there are a lot of things Premier Ford and I don't agree on. There's a lot.
Why do you think Doug Ford's name is coming up all of a sudden? Mr. Trudeau. I thought there was a truce. I thought there was a gentleman's agreement in place. I keep pointing this out. The Liberals remain, according to this poll, the preferred choice for older Canadians. 55 plus. 34 to 31 for the Liberals among older Canadians. That could prove to be very beneficial come election night. As for one of that big question, time for a change. Is it time for a change? The Ipsos number is 62%, so it's not as high as the Abacus number, but it's just high enough to keep the Liberals sweating a little bit, you would have to think. And the nightly tracking from Ecos puts the Liberals back in the lead. Liberals 32.9, let's call it 33. Conservatives 31.7, let's call it 32. NDP at 17. But Ecos as well says the Conservatives are leading in Ontario. And finally on the polls, Main Street Research, Keto Maggie's firm, Keto, was on our show yesterday. He's doing this thing for iPolitics called the Election Barometer. It's very slick if you're on social media. It now says there is a better than 50-50 chance that there could be a conservative minority government. Wowza. Who had that on the bingo card? That's a big change. But on the very idea of a conservative minority government, I would encourage everyone to read Paul Wells this morning and his latest for Maclean's on whether a conservative minority government is even possible, because Paul offers a very sobering dose of reality on how, look, for the team in blue, it's got to be majority or bust, okay? Unless maybe the Bloc does very well in the election, it would be very, very hard for the Conservatives to even get the chance to form a minority government. Okay? Even if they do end up winning the most seats after all the votes are counted. If it's a so-called hung parliament, in all likelihood, Trudeau will get the first shot to test the confidence of the House with a throne speech. And then let the horse trading begin. Or it could all be academic. Trudeau gets his mojo back. Voters will reward him with what he craves most of all, that majority mandate. His talking point this morning, he was in Hamilton. It was supposed to be about housing. Didn't hear a lot about housing. Heard a lot about mandatory vaccines. Aaron O'Toole doesn't get it. Okay, that's the wedge issue again this morning. Trudeau's back on this one. Mandatory vaccines. Trudeau was on this over and over and over and over and over again this morning, even though the announcement was about housing. Reporters had questions about Afghanistan. All he wanted to talk about was how Aaron O'Toole doesn't get it. Aaron O'Toole doesn't get it on the need for mandatory vaccines. We have some tape on this? Yes? Roll tape.
We can't afford Aaron O'Toole's approach on housing, just like we can't afford his plan to rip up our commitment on $10 a day childcare or on vaccinations. And on vaccines, let's be clear. What Aaron O'Toole is planning is just wrong. If premiers and mayors and business owners and families and sports teams and universities, if they all know why vaccines matter, if they all get it, so why doesn't Aaron O'Toole?
Why doesn't Aaron O'Toole get it? Aaron O'Toole doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. Aaron O'Toole will have an event at 10 o'clock. Mr. Singh, 10:30. And that's kind of the lay of the election landscape this morning. We're all over it again today. Who's winning on social media? Hard to believe it's the Liberals. Okay. Media manipulators. Fake news Freeland. Christopher Freeland. Be warned. This tweet is media manipulation. You can't trust the tweet. The tweet's fake news. It's Trump-like in its falseness. We'll get into this. What party has the best social media presence so far and doesn't mean anything? Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper on the campaign, how it's going, how Aaron O'Toole can actually continue making this a competitive race. Or could it be that once there's a course correction, all is going to revert to the natural order of things and there's going to be a Liberal victory? Local side of things, okay, not really related to the election. Very important meeting today for the trustees of the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Just a little more than 2 weeks to go until the first day of school. They're still firming things up on what the school year is going to look like. Who is going to need to mask up? Where they're going to need to mask up, who will need to be vaccinated, required, okay? No ifs, ands, or buts. They're still figuring that out. So we're going to get into that this morning with the help of a trustee. The province has guidelines, but local boards can go beyond the guidelines if they feel they need to go beyond the guidelines. So that's coming up. And wading pools in the city. We're having this heat wave, and yet 50 wading pools in the city of Ottawa closed today. I mean, we have a heat warning in effect. 83% humidity. Let's round it up to 150. A forecasted high of 32, humidex 36, and 50 wading pools closed today. This has always puzzled me. It's the same with lifeguards at the beach with the city of Ottawa. The city of Ottawa has no sense, no concept of customer service, of actually serving the customer. Okay? It just goes by the same rigid schedule year after year after year after year. The beaches, for example, with the beaches open this day and the beaches close this day, no matter the weather. Mooney's Bay could be frozen over. No, you're a lifeguard, you're working today. Or it could be a humidex of 42. Nope, the beaches are closed today because we haven't hired any lifeguards. Because it's not beach season yet. And obviously it's the same with wading pools. No matter the weather. Riley Brockington, city councillor, he's trying to keep some of them open, willing to commit some funds from his office budget to make it happen. We're chasing him down this morning, just firming up a time, probably 11:15 or something like that. And it's the Rob Snow Show, home of the Talk Back Hour. Today, I'm kind of moving away from the federal election campaign. I want to get into where you think we are, where you think we're headed with Delta and COVID-19. We have Trudeau, his talking point today, and you can bet it's quite deliberate. Vaccines, mandatory. Aaron O'Toole doesn't get it. Aaron O'Toole is reckless, dangerous. It's okay for me to call the election during a fourth wave for no good reason, but Aaron O'Toole, he's the dangerous one. The school board still finalizing plans, 2 weeks till the first day of class. High-profile member of the Ontario government's science advisory table ups and quits because he says it's all become too politicized, and the Ford government is hiding a grim outlook for the fall. Grim. BC doing a vaccine card, and it's very aggressive. The plan from Dr. Bonnie Henry. You must show your vaccine card with your vaccine status on it and another piece of ID in order to get into all kinds of businesses, sporting events, concerts, movie theaters, restaurants. I totally saw this coming. Show the card. The BC vaccine card. A lot of people think Doug Ford should be doing that. Nova Scotia ramping up its border checkpoint again with New Brunswick, COVID-19, the fourth wave, Delta, the pandemic. Where are we with this pandemic? Is the worst over? Or do you have bad feelings about the fall? 750-1310 after the 10 o'clock news. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background that comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporated the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
Who's winning on social in election 44? We're so happy to have back on our program Lindsay, Finneran-Gingras, digital and content lead for Hill and Knowlton Strategies. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. So we're well into the election campaign now. What have you thought of the social media presence of each of the parties?
I mean, I think they've all gone at it quite differently and many quite effectively. So, I mean, I'll just start and go through by the parties. So
Sure thing.
Dag Mead, I think, is looking the most natural he's ever looked, and that's coming through on his social. Really great, warm content of him engaging with people, and he just looks authentic. As much as that word is overused, he just looks like a guy you want to sit and talk to, and they're really playing that up with the media, which makes sense since they don't really have the dollars behind advertising that the other parties do. Aaron O'Toole's come out loud and done a lot of things to sort of get eyeballs on his plan, from, you know, bearing his arms in a T-shirt that they released on social to sort of the GST holiday. I think he's been very good at packaging up his platform and making it sort of work on social and get eyeballs on social. And then Trudeau, I mean, I think much of how they've used social so far sort of has been in the last few days, seeing how the war room misfired there and edited that clip, and it's turned back on them with sort of Twitter calling it labeling it sort of misleading, and, you know, that becoming the media narrative rather than anything else.
Yeah, so maybe let's expand there, since it's so fresh in everyone's mind, and it's taking up a lot of oxygen on the hustings. A lot of questions from Mr. Trudeau yesterday about it. It's on the front page of the papers this morning. What went wrong there?
Yeah, I mean, so you saw the Liberals do this in 2019 with Andrew Scheer. They released a video of him speaking against gay marriage way back in 2005, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they released it right before the election. They had a minister tweet it out, and it was used to get the media asking questions of Andrew Scheer and to get people asking questions about how he felt about gay marriage and LGBTQ rights. So they have this playbook. of how they sort of release these damaging videos.
Right.
I think
that one landed. That one landed.
That one worked. So you can tell why they'd want to do it again, right? If it worked, why would you change it? So they went back to that same playbook. But, Twitter has changed a lot of its rules because of Trump, because of misinformation. And this time it didn't land, and it's, continues to be a headache for them. And I think that they sort of look like they're playing Trump-like politics, right?
Yeah. I guess it's part of the new frontier, isn't it? To have a tweet labeled like that. It's never happened before, right? That hasn't happened before for a Canadian political party, has it?
No, it hasn't. It is part of the new frontier that Facebook and Twitter sort of, are under pressure to police this stuff better. And, it means they have to play by different rules.
And I'm assuming that would be complaint-driven?
It would be, yes.
Okay.
People would be flagging it as inaccurate, and then Twitter actually manually reviews it and sees if they deem it misleading.
Okay. All right. So let's, we have an NDP. This is an NDP ad attacking Trudeau, right? On Farmer. It's 15 seconds, so it's right in the wheelhouse of social media. Yeah, let's go here.
Justin Trudeau doesn't want you to see this. He voted against drug coverage for all Canadians.
Je vote contre.
He says the right thing at election time, but he has no intention of doing it. Ready for better? We're ready too.
Ready for better? Ready for better. What do you think? What do you think about how he's coming off there in his messaging there? Yeah.
I think it's good. I think that, putting Jagmeet at the end makes it, he's their biggest asset right now. And so I think him delivering that message works for them. And I think they're sort of calling Trudeau out for not delivering. It's in terms of social, 15 seconds is the perfect size for an ad. You don't want anything longer than that. Frankly, sometimes you want it to be even shorter than that.
Right.
So to make a bite-sized argument in 15 seconds that actually lands, I think it's hard. And I think they did it there.
Okay. Let's, this is a Liberal campaign ad. Came out about a week ago. And the main criticism that I've heard from punditry is that the Liberal message is kind of flowery and grandiose, that it's not specific, it's not targeted enough. But let's listen to this. It's 30 seconds. Let's listen to this one here.
Canadians always show up for each other. Together, we helped families and businesses get through the pandemic. We made sure vaccines were available for everyone, and we worked as a team to keep our loved ones healthy and safe. We pulled together when it was needed the most, because that's how we accomplish big things. So let's keep going. Let's keep working to make things better and leave no one behind. Let's keep moving forward for everyone.
Let's keep moving forward for everyone. What do you think of the message? The message.
I think it's a good starting point for the campaign.
Good starting point. Okay.
It's how they wanted to frame it, right? That the better future for everyone, and it reminds people of who got them through the pandemic and sort of the work that the federal government did to get everyone through the pandemic. I think it's it's odd how disconnected it seems from the campaign they're playing out day to day with the attacks on the Conservatives, and sort of, I think there's this weird double campaign they're running where the advertising is very forward-looking, very positive-looking.
Right.
And then the day-to-day on the campaign is largely focused on sort of taking knocks at O'Toole and sort of delivering the blows there. So it's an odd divide right now in the campaign.
All right. So, to tie a ribbon on this thing here, first, second, and third, you give the edge to the New Democrats so far?
In terms of content and digital, no.
Winning on digital? Winning in digital?
Yeah. I still think if you look back and pull back, I think the Liberals, in terms of the pure amount of content they have in market, is leading.
Okay. All right.
If you go to their Facebook ad library, they have 800 ads in market. The NDP have, I think, 30. Right? They're playing in different leagues. I think in terms of sort of promoting the leader and coming off as, approachable and like great organic content, I think the NDP and the Conservatives are leading the Liberals in that realm. But the paid content and the advertising, I think the Liberals still have a leg up.
All right. Very nice to hear from you. Thank you again.
Great to talk.
Yep. Lindsay, Finneran-Gingras, digital content lead, Hill and Knowlton. Up after the news, it's the Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now feeling like 23 degrees in Ottawa, 24 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. G7 leaders logging in to their meeting over Afghanistan. Pressure expected to be squarely on the Americans, who say they have a firm pullout date from Afghanistan next Tuesday. Other countries say once the Americans leave, they will have to as well, leaving behind people who need to flee the country for their safety. The Taliban has already said there will be retribution if the Americans stay past their announced deadline of August 31st. Affordable housing strategy from the Liberals. Justin Trudeau offering billions in loans and grants that would allow renters to become homeowners if the Liberal Party is elected federal government. Long-term care commitments are also being made today in the federal election campaign. To start this day, we'll have more for you coming up at 10 o'clock. Same empty stadium and another opening ceremony. This time the Paralympic Games opened in Tokyo today. Organizers say they are confident the Paralympics can be held safely. But Tokyo remains under a state of emergency with rising COVID case counts, and that state of emergency lasts until the middle of September. Paralympic Games are scheduled to wrap up on September 5th. City News time at 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
He is the poor professor from the Glebe. Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. Welcome back.
Thank you.
What have you thought of the election campaign so far?
It's quite interesting. It's very interesting because it would appear that the momentum, I think it was George Bush, the father, called the Big Mo, it would appear and I know this is early, it's preliminary, but it seems that the big Mo, or if it's not big Mo, some little Mo is emerging on behalf of the Conservatives, and it may convert into a gallop into big Mo. And I say that because Trudeau had a terrible week. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with his first week was just terrible. I mean, he had protesters dogging him, and he couldn't answer the question why he called the election. And there's a lot of people angry out west with all the forest fires that he called the election in the middle of this fourth wave.
Afghanistan.
There's people in Quebec saying the same thing. The polls are tightening very, very much so. Incredible polls. Nick Nanos' poll and the Ipso Reid, Daryl Bricker. So I do not believe that the election is a slam dunk. I do not believe Trudeau's going to win a majority. And I think what's up in the right now, up for grabs, is a potential, credible potential, is either a Liberal minority or even possibly a Conservative minority government, depending on how many more times Trudeau steps in some very large cow pies.
Well, yeah, and on Conservative minority, though, Paul Wells argues this morning, how possible is that?
Well, I think it's possible from a technical, let me explain. I'm not saying they'll form the government. When I say a minority government, I should be more clear on my phrasing. That they could have the largest single number of seats, but not a majority.
They could win the most seats, They could win the most seats.
If the Liberals are in second place with the seat count, well, then they'll coalesce, and the NDP will ensure that they that they prop them up. But from a seat count point of view, and for those who aren't following it too closely, there's a dogfight on right now. In BC, the NDP are just going up very strongly. The Conservatives are in first place, if you can believe it, in BC. So you can't assume, as some people do in central Canada, oh, well, the Liberals, they own BC. Not even remotely close. And in Quebec, they're in a dogfight with the Bloc Québécois, and the opposition leader, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, the federal leader, is vastly more articulate in both English and French than is Mr. Trudeau. Let's be very clear about that. He is quick on his feet. And then down in the Maritimes, which we've always assumed was a Liberal stronghold, we just saw the foregone conclusion of a Liberal majority government in Nova Scotia turn into a Conservative majority government. And then finally, and most importantly...
I don't know if there's going to be a repeat at the federal level. I
don't know. But the one I'm really following most closely, Rob, is the huge swath of ridings and voters surrounding Toronto, the famous 905 area code, which implies it's one city. It's not. There's a whole smash of cities there. There's a third of Canada lives in Southern Ontario, basically. And I want to put one more very important point out that people don't, and the media never talk about this, and neither do the pundits and the analysts. If you look at the actual election outcomes, election after election, so I'm going big picture here, looking at trends in the data. I divide Canada up into three huge areas. The urban, and that's the downtown, like the beaches in Toronto, the Glebe in Ottawa, Westboro in Ottawa. So you've got the urban, you've got the suburban, and you've got the rural. And the urban core, which has the highest average income per capita, if you look at the StatsCan data, it's very clear, in every city. The urban core is where the wealthiest people, the most privileged people live, and they're represented overwhelmingly by Liberals and NDP. The only city in Canada that I can think of, major city, where the urban downtown has a Conservative is Calgary. And that's an anomaly. As we know, Alberta's an anomaly. But if you look at any other city, major city in Canada, the urban goes overwhelmingly Liberal or NDP. Now, if you switch to the rural is largely Conservative, although there's a significant Liberal number of seats in the rural, but it's predominantly Conservative. That brings us to the burbs, the suburbs. And the burbs are most interesting because that's where most people in Canada live. It's not the urban downtown. The urban downtown it depends on how you measure the urban downtown, but it's somewhere around 15-20% of the population. And the rurals, depending on how you measure it, is about 5%. The suburbs is where, Willie Loman will say, why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is. Well, the suburbs are where the votes are. And people may think that Trudeau's very popular in the burbs. He's not. there is a real fight going on. I think a lot of more and more voters in the burbs where meat and potato issues are very important, and there's an increasing recognition that he's talking about taking away their trucks. They really, progressives.
And they
really
can't afford meat, and you can't afford potatoes. So
and of course, decarbonization. More and more people are realizing decarbonization means ripping out your natural gas furnace, or your oil furnace, or your propane furnace, or your wood furnace, and replacing it with electric heat. And it's starting to, I think, more and more people are saying, wait a minute, this is going to cost enormous amounts of money. And right now, the talk is on housing, and we'll be talking about it in a few minutes. But I think that the whole decarbonization, this mad rush to decarbonize very, very quickly, is going to become more and more prominent as more and more voters in the burbs realize that this is going to cost them enormous amounts of money. And so I don't buy the argument. First off, I don't think Trudeau's going to win a majority. And I don't even buy the argument it's a slam dunk that he's going to win a minority government. It depends on how well. I think it's critical that O'Toole performs well in the English debates.
Yeah.
The Quebec debates, I mean, it's a two-horse race.
Yeah, it's a two-horse race.
As long as he doesn't fall down and stumble, and as long as he is reasonable, he'll be okay.
French isn't that bad, actually.
He's got to perform very well in the English debates, because Trudeau and the Liberals are going to continue to do their what I consider despicable and disgraceful behavior, which is trying to portray him as a freak, a monster, a proto-fascist, that sort of thing. This demonization by trying to argue he's this extreme monster. And I think it's dishonest. I think it's immoral. I think they've crossed the line in this. It's one thing to disagree with your opponents, say, look, my policy is better because of this, this, and that, but they're not doing that. Trudeau is not debating on policy. Listen to his speeches every day. His response, he is demonizing the other guy and attacking them, saying they're very, 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 very bad, and implicitly I'm very, very good, and I'm wonderful.
All right. So last week, it's a rather it's not sort of something that is mainstream and top of mind for a lot of people. The mandate for the Bank of Canada from the government, but nevertheless important, nonetheless, important, but kind of obscure on a policy side of things.
I'm going to disagree with you.
No. I mean, come on. Yeah, well, hold on a second.
Okay.
Because we're going to play the clip here. Mr. Trudeau said he in response said, I don't think about monetary policy. I think about families. Well, let's play the tape here. Play the tape.
Do you have a position on the mandate? Would you support a slightly higher tolerance for inflation?
I don't know. When I think about the biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward, you'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy.
Forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy.
You'll understand that I think about families.
I think about families.
First got
okay, that's good. That's good. What did you think of that remark there?
I do not believe this was a gaffe.
Oh, okay.
I believe he unwittingly, deeply and profoundly unwittingly, revealed, taking back the curtain. And let me unpack this and explain. First off, for those who are saying, well, who cares about monetary policy? Hold it. Stop right there. Monetary policy is just a big fancy word for interest rates. Now, anyone listening to me, are you really telling yourself you don't give a damn about interest rates? Yeah, your mortgage goes up 4 points. You're saying, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. Hit me again. Sock it to me, baby. Don't be silly. Monetary policy equals interest rates. Interest rates is important to everybody who borrows. Now, I'm going to where I want to go. Mr. Trudeau unwittingly, believe me, unwittingly, revealed something. He has come, as he's told us himself in the media, from an extremely privileged background. He comes from an extremely wealthy family. It hasn't come out in the media don't talk about it. But it is on the record that his grandfather sold a chain of gas stations to Exxon back in the 30s for several $100 million. And anybody can take a compound interest investment calculator. They're on the web. And just take the number that he sold it for. It's on the record.
Yeah, I don't think it was several hundred million.
80 years, and you're going to come up with a plus $1 billion number. I believe he is a billionaire. I believe that's why he refuses absolutely to reveal it.
I don't think he's a billionaire.
No, people can't disprove it either until he reveals his financial statements. He's not going to, because he's incredibly rich. What on earth has that got to do with this? Rich people don't borrow money. They have gazillions of dollars. They don't have to go to the bank to borrow to buy a car or to buy a house or to start up a small business. Ordinary people in the real world, like all of us, have to borrow money to buy our big ticket purchases. And what he was really unwittingly revealing was interest rates aren't important to me. I mean, what the hell is interest rates? I mean, I don't borrow money. I'm rich. I don't have to borrow.
Yeah, but rich people have investments, and if you but hold on, Professor, hold on, Professor. But rich people have investments, you know. So interest rates are important to rich people too, you know.
And monetary policy equals interest rates.
And
interest rates for most the proverbial family that he quoted.
Yeah.
To most people, if you say interest rates, they don't think of the amount they're going to get in a capital gain investment. They think, how much am I going to pay for my mortgage, car
loan, whatever. Yeah,
how much am I going to pay for my car loan when my car dies and I have to buy a new car? And he was completely oblivious to that. Not because I'm not trying to tell you he's a bad person. Look, if you're born into extraordinary privilege and wealth, that's not your fault. You don't choose it. He didn't choose to be born where he was. It just means that he grew up in a world that is so far from the average Canadian. It's unbelievable. And so they market him as this ordinary guy, one of us, middle class, and it's just preposterous nonsense. By his own words, he was born into extraordinary privilege at the top of the top of the top of the hierarchy. That's not a crime, but it means he doesn't have a clue about why monetary policy, i.e. interest rates, are important to the average person.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll talk about vaccine mandates, housing. Professor Ian Lee is here. Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use the exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
All right, we're going to fact check you, Professor. All right. David has looked it up. He's Mr. Trudeau's was it grandfather, I guess, sold the gas stations for $1 million.
Okay, I didn't have that figure.
Adjusted for inflation, $19 million in today's money. But nevertheless, we don't have to pass the hat for him, okay?
It was invested by Pitfield Mackay Ross, and this is on the record. It's been reported.
Yeah.
And they're a very old firm, a financial investment firm.
Yeah.
And that money was in the 1930s. And, the old joke, the first million is your hardest to make money.
Right.
And somebody gives me $19 million in net present value dollars. I think I can then, if you give me 70 years, I don't have 70 years left, but you give me 70 years and I think I can turn it into a very healthy sum.
I bet you could. All right. A growing list of employers and other businesses, take TD Place just as an example, requiring proof of vaccination, negative or a negative COVID-19 test in order to either, say, return to work or to go to a football game. What do you think of policies like these?
They're inevitable.
Inevitable.
I think they're inevitable. Setting aside, what you think of, I believe in vaccines. I've had many, many vaccines. This was not my first vaccine. I've had vaccines since I was a child. I believe in vaccines writ large. Not COVID vaccines, all vaccines. Polio vaccines and mumps vaccines and, hepatitis A vaccine, hepatitis B. I've had them all. So I believe in them. But that's not the issue. You didn't ask me that. I think it's inevitable that large employers, I'm not talking small little, mom and pop stands who have no real assets, to be blunt. Okay, they don't have billions of dollars of assets if you're a two-person, a takeout restaurant. But the big companies are very vulnerable because they know that if somebody gets sick at work from COVID and dies, they're going to be sued from here to kingdom come. And so it's inevitable that large employers, whether they're governments or whether they're corporations or universities and colleges, it's inevitable that they're going to go down this road because it is just so, I think, obvious that it's all upside imposing vaccine mandates and no downside. Not having them, it's all downside. You're going to be in the court of public opinion. The newspapers will profile your company if there's an outbreak of the variant and some people get sick, and you're going to get trashed from here to kingdom come in the media daily because they'll say, why didn't you adopt mandatory vaccination? And that person would be alive today if it hadn't been for your irresponsible decision. So that logic is going to drive, I'm not going to put the size, it's large organizations, that have large numbers of employees are going to inevitably move towards that position because they're really vulnerable in the court of public opinion and in the legal courts when somebody sues them.
Sorry, I turned my microphone off there by mistake. Okay. Report on Business. Report on Business of the Globe and Mail has a headline. It says Canada's housing bull market has been ongoing for 30 years. Yeah. Okay, house prices have gone up for 30 years. Bloomberg News says it's been 25 years. Whatever, it's been a good run. I think we can all agree it's been a good run. But what do you think of the party's various proposals on housing? For example, the O'Toole Conservatives say they build 1 million homes. Today, the Trudeau Liberals are saying, well, build 1.4 million homes. You've been talking about supply. We need more supply of homes. Yeah. What about different terms of mortgages? 7 years, 10 years. Singh is talking about 30 years. What do you think of ideas like these? What you're hearing on housing and what to do about making housing more affordable?
Let me go big picture first. I think all of these policies are a implicit, unstated, massive condemnation and repudiation of municipal councillors and mayors across our country that have repeatedly passed bylaws and budgets and so forth that have very deliberately tried to restrict the building of new property, housing. And they've done that by restricting the urban boundary. They've done it in Ottawa. They did it in Toronto repeatedly. They've done it for years. The worst of all, I think, are in Vancouver. and it uses my acid test data point, average house price. It's higher in Vancouver, which suggests the shortages are greater. I'm using empirical data. You know, if the average house price is higher, it suggests that there's a greater imbalance of supply and demand. And these councils have been doing it in the name of the environment. And as you know, I have argued that this is a smokescreen for self-interested councillors representing the most privileged neighborhoods by restricting the supply and driving up and turning millionaires in the Glebe and, you know, Sandy Hill and the beaches in Toronto and Shaughnessy and Vancouver and Town of Mount Royal, turning millionaires into multimillionaires. It's greed and it's selfishness. And the government, the political parties are finally realizing this is a very hot potato. And they have finally realized, because there's been a drumbeat of reports and studies and so forth, pointing the finger to, guess what, supply and demand, and a shortage, an imbalance. Scotiabank, CMHC acknowledged it. Various studies have looked at it, and there's a shortage. In fact, Scotiabank empirically determined that there's about 1.8 million shortfall of housing units in Canada. So the Liberals finally woke up, the Conservatives woke up, and so now they're proposing to address the problem. And so, yes, we do have a shortage of housing. Yes, that is the way to go. I don't see how either party can achieve it, because if the culprit, and the number one culprit in Canada, are these municipal councillors and mayors who continue to pass all kinds of zoning bylaw restrictions and restrictions on the urban boundary, how are we going to make these irresponsible councillors act in a responsible, ethical manner? Okay. And if they won't, and they won't. So what do? I mean, I suppose you can cut off the transfers to them and say either you open up and expand and allow a lot more housing to be built, or we'll penalize you on your municipal transfers. I haven't heard that from any political party. Second point, very quickly, on the mortgage side. Yeah. I understand the logic, extend the mortgages, for example, but this is a Band-Aid.
That's a Band-Aid.
As I do, and many do now.
You just end up paying more to the bank anyway. You'll just end up paying more to the bank.
Houses. You got to build more houses.
Yeah, you got to build more houses. Yeah. But
there's no way around it.
Yeah.
Everything else is a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's interesting. They all seem to recognize it, though. The New Democrats, their number is like 500,000. With O'Toole is a million, and with Trudeau today, it was 1.4 million. Like it's
But Rob, before you think your listeners think I'm just being all negative on these two parties, no. Now we've got them admitting, on the record, campaigning no less, thank you very much, that we need a lot more houses. And as I said, this is an explicit repudiation and condemnation of our municipal councillors across Canada who have worked assiduously, very, very hard to restrict the supply of housing in Canada to the point that we have this massive shortage that has caused house prices to go through the roof, which has discriminated, most importantly and seriously, against our young people and immigrants coming to Canada. Right. That's why it's such a shameful policy by the municipal councillors in this country and the mayors who support this. And now we have two national political parties, basically without naming them and saying, you bad guys, you bad people that are councillors, but their policies are an explicit repudiation of these municipal rules and bylaws that have tried to restrict the supply of housing. So let's make it explicit. I'm doing it here on your show. No, they're not, naming one councillor or one mayor, but their policy proposals to build a lot more houses are a complete repudiation and condemnation of the municipal councils across Canada that have tried to restrict the supply of housing because they're, quote, against urban sprawl, end quote. And I applaud the Liberals, I applaud the Conservatives for at least announcing this is the problem, this is the solution. Now I want to see them go after these municipal councils by threatening them with saying, look, we're going to penalize you because there's all kinds of transfers that go on from federal and provincial governments
gas tax
to municipal
is a big
governments.
One. Yeah.
So
okay.
Let's use that fiscal leverage and threaten to cut off their gas tax.
Okay. All right. Got to go. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Professor Ian Lee with us every Tuesday morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling like 30 in Ottawa, 23 degrees in Smiths Falls, 24. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Liberal Justin Trudeau, the first to hit the hustings on day 10 of this federal election campaign, while anti-vax hecklers interrupted the Liberal leader. Trudeau made an affordable housing commitment ahead of the G7 virtual meeting. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
Standing in front of a home under construction, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau announcing a new $1 billion rent-to-own program that will help more Canadians own their first home. He's also vowing to create 1.4 million new homes in 4 years, offer a new tax-free savings account for people under 40, and will target practices that drive up the price of homes.
We'll crack down on the predatory speculators that stack the deck against you. So no more blind bidding. No more foreign wealth being parked in homes that people should be living in.
Trudeau was heckled by anti-vaccination protesters and asked them to get the shot or have their say with their vote. He also brought Premier Doug Ford into the campaign, noting the feds are trying to work with the province on $10 a day childcare and long-term care standards.
Well, none of this happens if Erin O'Toole is sitting across the table from Doug Ford.
The attack comes as polls show the Liberals and Conservatives are neck and neck. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole speaks in Ottawa soon. At the same time, Green Party leader Anna-May Paul will be discussing affordable housing in Toronto. Shortly after that, the NDP's Jagmeet Singh makes a long-term care announcement in Mississauga. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 10:03. As the heat continues, the NCC tweeting that Loonie Lake Park Beach is closed to swimming until further notice. There's a lifeguard shortage. There are other beaches in Gatineau Park are open. That's O'Brien, Blanchette, and Perron. On the Ottawa side, Britannia, Westboro, Mooney's Bay, and Petrie Island River Beach open. Swimming, though, not recommended at Petrie Island East Bay. G7 leaders are meeting virtually. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau playing his cards close to his chest on whether he wants the G7 to push for an extension of the American military commitment in Afghanistan. American President Biden expected to face calls from some fellow leaders to extend that commitment beyond next Tuesday's deadline. As vaccination rates continue to hold steady in Ottawa, nowhere near peak levels, Ottawa Public Health is adapting. They're making mobile vaccination teams available to local businesses. Now, local advocate Michael Wood told City News if a business reached out to him, he would certainly get the ball rolling.
Filled out the form for Boston Pizza. They got a call. They're going to do a site visit. I know that Al's Steakhouse down on Elgin Street. And I've been speaking with some of the bigger box stores that don't have pharmacies in some of the hardest hit regions like Herongate to try and get pop-up vaccination centers inside their stores.
Now, OPH says it's providing this service for first and second doses. A study published in Nature Communications finds breast cancers are fueled by estrogen hormones, may also be stimulated by high levels of cholesterol. Researchers found the most migrating cancer cells that swallow up cholesterol cells die. The ones that don't essentially become supercells and more easily metastasize. More study is needed, but the suggestion is cutting dietary cholesterol and using cholesterol-reducing drugs may also combat cancer. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On The Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, The Rob Snow Show continues.
COVID-19, Delta variant fourth wave. Topic for the hour, 750-1310. Call in line. I'd like you to call me and give me your take on all of these questions, some of these questions, maybe just pick one, okay, and answer it. But the overarching one is the worst over for the pandemic, okay? Is the worst over? Or, given all the news headlines recently, okay, do you get the sense we could go back to the bad old days because of Delta? In addition to that, do you think students are finally going to have a full school year? Would you tolerate, as a parent, schools being closed again? Or do you want those in charge to do whatever it takes to keep the schools open for the whole year? Do you think we could see travel restrictions and border checkpoints between provinces again? Oh, that's in the news. What do you think about the idea of the BC vaccine card? You need to show the BC vaccine card plus other photo ID to get into all manner of non-essential businesses. Show the card or be denied entry. Okay. Restaurants, movie theaters, fitness centers, sporting events. Some suggest Ontario should be doing the same thing, that there should be an Ontario vaccine card. What would you think of that? Make it a province-wide rule. You can't come in here unless you have the card. And would you, under any circumstances, accept another lockdown? Would you, under any circumstances, accept another lockdown? Or is that just out of the question for you? No, we're not having another lockdown. No way, no how. I know it's a lot of questions. It's a lot to take in. But there's a lot of news about COVID-19, and I'd really just love to have a conversation with you about it this morning here on the Rob Snow Show. That's why we do the Talk Back Hour, just to get a sense of how you're feeling, where you're leaning, what your headspace is right now. So 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Okay, we're having an election during the fourth wave. Yeah, it's Trudeau's fourth wave election. And I mean, news about COVID-19, Delta variant, vaccines, restrictions, all the measures and the half measures being taken, just all over the news today. And I have a lot of questions, as you just heard, to ask you this morning, based on a lot of these news stories. There's another month left to talk about the election, and don't worry, we're going to be all over the election. Okay. Even between now and noon, we'll have lots of election talk. But I did want to spend some time getting back into our discussions about COVID-19, about the Delta variant, about restrictions, mandating vaccines, all of it. I mean, really, even when you think about the election, who knows what the pandemic election sounds like, looks like 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, and what kind of impact COVID-19, a fourth wave, could actually have on the outcome of the election campaign. In 2 weeks, COVID-19 could be the dominant election issue. So like I said, all kinds of questions, all based on various news stories that have been in the mix in the last 24 hours or so at 750-1310. But I think my big kind of overarching question is, when it comes to the pandemic, is the worst over? The worst is over. We're not going back to the way things used to be ever. Or do you have kind of a feeling of worry or anxiety, or maybe it's even stronger than maybe it's dread, that come the fall, the winter, gosh, we could be back into what has become all too familiar, okay? Cancel events and lockdowns and school closures and travel restrictions and hospitals filled with COVID patients. What do you think? What's your sense of it? Where things are, where they're going? I mean, are you optimistic or more on the worried side? It's kind of the big picture question that I have. And then we can kind of take it from there, see how the conversation goes, because there are lots of other questions that I'd like to ask you about, more specific issues, as you can see. Let's see, who's up first here? Orleans. Let's go to the East End. Orleans, Phil, you're on City News. Phil.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm okay, Phil. Do you think the worst is over, or do you think come fall or winter we could kind of be back to where we were? What's your sense of it, sir?
Well, I'm an extreme pessimist. Okay. That's what I get paid for.
Okay, all right.
And I think the worst is yet to come.
Oh, really? Okay. What makes you say that, sir?
Well, just what I see.
Right.
I'm at home and all I do is watch news broadcast.
Right. Okay.
From what I'm seeing, people aren't saying anything, and things are out of control everywhere. And I think the worst is yet to come.
I think the worst is yet to come. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let me ask you just a few more questions just on that then. So, look, if the worst is yet to come, does that mean you would be open to another, like, lockdown or something like that? Or
I think the first step is to get this vaccine card thing going as fast as possible.
I think we should have one of those, a vaccine card.
Right away.
You think so? Okay. That's interesting. They're doing that in British Columbia in a big way.
BC and Quebec. I can't see why other provinces won't follow suit.
Right. Okay. But you think we might see travel restrictions, say border checkpoints, these kinds of things again?
Well, my opinion on that is you might have noticed the case count starting to increase.
Oh, it's way up. Yeah, it's way up. It's up more than 80% in 2 weeks, sir. The number of cases.
And what happened 2 weeks ago? They opened the borders.
Oh, yeah, they did open the American border. Yeah, they allowed Americans in,
so
for
now
travel.
The Americans and the virus.
Okay, all right. Well, look, thank you. Very interesting, Phil. Very interesting take. I'm glad to hear where you are. Because some people kind of have this sense of... well, it's over, right? COVID's over. COVID's, yesterday's news. While other people are sort of kind of dreading, I think, what's ahead. I think one of them is Dr. Fissman, and that's kind of what got me thinking about this topic today. Where the pandemic goes from here. Does life return to normal, or are we headed back into an isolated and long, cold winter? The story about Dr. Fissman. Professor Epidemiology, University of Toronto, announced this week he's stepping down from the province's science advisory table. And in his statement on the matter, his resignation, he says he's not doing any media interviews. He said he was, quote, increasingly uncomfortable with the degree to which political considerations appear to be driving outputs from the tables. And just before that, he was on Twitter and he said the science table had, quote, important modeling work that projects a grim fall. Grim fall. Grim. Okay? But I think a lot of people at this particular point in time, third week of August, late summer heat wave, they're still enjoying summer holidays. That's not the kind of headspace they're in right now. So I'd just like to know kind of where you are right now. Art in Ottawa. Go ahead. Art, you're on City News. Do you think the worst is over, or are you kind of worried about what's ahead? Art, give me a sense of where you are.
Instead of a complete yes or no, it'll be a gray area.
Gray area, okay.
I believe that Trudeau should put a moratorium on all travel between provinces. I mean, I am a left guy,
right?
And I believe that if they did this successfully in the Soviet Union, and they do it very successfully in the People's Republic of China now, you're not allowed to travel from area to area without permission. And I believe that Trudeau believes in what I believe in, and he should.
It'll be hard for Mr. Trudeau to campaign across the country if he's telling Canadians you can't go from province to province to province, right?
Trudeau is the prime minister. He can go anywhere he wants.
Oh, he can go anywhere he wants. I see. He's special.
But not just anybody.
Okay.
You're not allowed.
Okay. Would Jagmeet Singh be allowed to?
Okay. Ask Premier Pallister. You can't just go from province to province anymore.
Okay.
If that's the way they run it in China and they ran it in the Soviet Union, it should be that way here.
Okay, well, you'll get some disagreement with me on that if there are two countries in the world that I hope Canada never emulates. It's the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore, and China. No thanks. Hard pass. But thanks for the call. It's fun. 10:17. Rob Snow Show, Talk Back Hour on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Again, we're talking about COVID-19, Delta variant, 4th wave. I mean, the big question, and there's a lot of other things we can get into, is the worst over with the pandemic? Is the worst over? Or do you have a feeling we could be headed back into the bad old days? The bad old days. Lockdowns, business closures, travel restrictions, isolation. What's your sense of it right now about where we are, where we're going? Mark in Ottawa South, you're on City News. Do you think the worst is over? Or?
No one can tell.
No one can tell. Okay.
I would say this, though.
All right.
I do support people being required to show proof of vaccination when they enter businesses and other premises.
Okay.
However, I don't like vaccine passports. The problem with that is if you have to drop a whole new document, it's going to take months to get these things to millions of people. And the organizations need us coming in right now. It seems to me that as long as you have the certificate you get when you have your second dose, and I'm looking at mine, it's on my desk in front of me, and it formally says you have received 2 valid doses.
Yes.
And as long as you show identification, such as even my oath card, which proves to the screener that I am the person named on that piece of paper,
yes.
that should be enough to do the job.
Should be enough, yeah.
We can all do that right now. But if we're all to get these passports, then we have to wait many weeks. The sheer logistics the task of creating these things, literally in the millions, is going to take time.
Yes. One would think.
Now, the other thing is, if we have to go into another lockdown, please don't make it like the third one. The curse of the third one was that the list of non-essential items that people couldn't buy included essential items such as clothing, shoes, socks. They couldn't sell you socks during the third lockdown, but they could sell you toenail polish. It's true, even if they're side by side in the same store.
All right, okay.
This problem didn't exist during the first two lockdowns. The other thing, of course, we're at a crucial threshold in the next 4 weeks. Can we get the schools and universities up and running? Can we keep the children and the adult students in there?
Yeah.
Which is why...
For a full year, for a change.
Yes, which is why I was so opposed to this election being called, because all national attention and all government resource at all levels must be devoted to this immediate, crucial task, which is upon us right now. Further down the road, when we recovered, we can all pay full attention to the election, and then we can attend candidates' meetings, and we can receive candidates at our doors, but not now.
Okay. All right, Mark. Thank you. Great call. Yeah. I don't know. I just, I read the news, I watch the news, I listen to the news, but I've also enjoyed, a little bit of freedom this summer. I don't know if I'm ready for a grim fall that Dr. Fissman's talking about. I just don't know if that's where most of us are right now, if we're really prepared to, hunker down again. And that's why I want to put this to you this morning at 750-1310, 750-1310. Do you think the worst of the pandemic is over, or do you think come the fall and the winter we could be, gosh, I hate to even suggest it, right back into the same old? Think of state of emergency, stay-at-home order. In Quebec, maybe curfews, business closures. What's your sense of it? What does your gut tell you? Mark brings up the schools, and that's one of the news stories in the mix today when it comes to the fourth wave. Schools, and what is school going to look like for students and staff in just a few weeks from now? Jackie Miller, great story in the Ottawa Citizen this morning about the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Quote, planned a special meeting today to discuss issues ranging from vaccination policies for staff to whether kindergarten students should be required to wear masks. Ottawa Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Etches, says she favors a cautious approach this fall, will recommend measures not required by the province, including ensuring students wear masks during physical activity indoors. Trustees at the Toronto District School Board, the province's largest, voted last week to add more precautions to their back-to-school plan. Elementary children must eat lunch in their classrooms, stay with their cohort at recess. Indoor assemblies aren't allowed. Singing is only allowed indoors with masks. Some masks are required for students in all grades, whereas the province only requires them starting in grade 1, end quote, Ottawa Citizen this morning. Marie, or Mary, I think it's Mary.
How are you?
Mary, yes. Is it Mary or Marie? Mary?
It's Marie.
Marie, okay.
Oui, Marie.
Marie.
Congratulations to you, Rob.
Oh, thank you.
Long life to you and your new love.
That's very kind of you. I'm very lucky. I'm a very lucky man, and of course, we've only been married a little more than 2 weeks, so marriage is like the greatest thing ever, Marie. We're still in the honeymoon phase. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Look,
do you think the worst is over, or are you dreading?
No. They're preparing us mentally for the Delta, the Lambda, the Epsilon, every kind of variant you can imagine.
Yeah.
But you know what? The Pfizer vaccine just got its FDA approval.
Yeah, full FDA approval.
Yeah. And I believe in vaccines as well. I've gotten them all. I have both my vaccines. But since I have both my vaccines, I don't wear a mask anymore because you have to be logical. When you look at Justin Trudeau going to the G7, meeting all these people from all different countries, and none of them are wearing masks. And Barack Obama, who did his party, 60th birthday, nobody was wearing a mask.
It was quite the bash.
They're not afraid of the Delta variant.
Yeah, well,
Why
maybe don't
should
be
I
like
be?
them. Maybe don't be like them. Maybe they're just setting a bad example, and you shouldn't be like that.
Come on.
Okay.
Why, if they're not afraid, why should I be afraid?
Okay.
Hey, if the vaccine is a good vaccine, and if there's a booster shot coming, bring it on. Bring it on.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay. All right, no, okay. Well, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I kind of did. All right. So when we come back, I mean, is the worst over? Are you filled with anxiety and dread when it comes to COVID-19, Delta, fourth wave? Are students going to have finally a full school year? Or just given what we're hearing from health officials, do you think the school year is going to be interrupted again? Do you see schools having to be closed again? Would you tolerate parents, grandparents, would you tolerate schools being closed again? Among the motions up for debate at the school board meeting today, call for mandatory vaccinations for any guest on school property, any volunteers, any mandatory vaccinations for staff without medical exemptions. All up for discussion at this big school board meeting today. COVID-19, Delta, fourth wave. Is the worst over? Or is it going to be a grim fall and winter? The bad old days could be back. This is City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 25 degrees. It feels like 32, 26 in Smiths Falls, and feeling like 33. Here's what's making news this hour. As Justin Trudeau faces another day of hecklers at a Liberal campaign announcement, he promised a $1 billion program to help Canadians get their first home. He says he will also help build, preserve, or repair an additional 1.4 million homes across the country over 4 years. Trudeau was heckled by anti-vaxxers while making promises in Hamilton. He then went to a G7 virtual meeting and says he's committed to saving as many people in Afghanistan as possible and as quickly as possible. He says conversations will continue. There is pressure on the American President Joe Biden to extend the withdrawal of troops. That deadline is scheduled for Tuesday. Positivity rate of COVID tests has hit 3% today in Ontario, reporting 486 more COVID cases today. Over 17,000 tests were done for the numbers. 12 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 5 in Eastern Ontario. No new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. And a data cleanup shows one fewer case in Renfrew. As we continue with a heat warning, the NCC says a lack of lifeguards has closed down Leamy Lake Park Beach. Other Gatineau Park beaches are open. In Ottawa, Britannia, Westboro, Mooney's, and Petrie Island River beaches are open. Swimming, though, not recommended at Petrie Island East Bay. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Talking about COVID-19, Delta, fourth wave. Is the worst over? Or could we go back to the bad old days? That's kind of what we're thinking about around here. Just kind of starting the conversation there, and we'll see where it goes. To Almont, Matthew. Good morning, Matthew.
Morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. Do you think the worst is over? Let me ask you that.
I would say yes.
Okay.
I
That's
think
good.
The more people get the vaccine, the less chance those vaccinated will not spread it, because as I understand it, Delta is already here, and it's the most infectious one thus far. And if it's not going very far quickly, then maybe it might just kind of burn out.
Well, fingers crossed that that's the case. So
if I'm right, I'm not 100% sure.
Right. Okay. Well,
I'm just saying my information's a bit spotty, but
right. Okay. But let me ask you this, though. Let's say it does really take off. I mean, we have cases that are up 80% in the last 2 weeks. We have the number of people dying in Canada from COVID-19 is up, more than 40% in the last 2 weeks. Vast majority of those people unvaccinated. But let's say it really takes off. And I know we're working from some assumptions here. Would you accept another lockdown? Or is like a lockdown just out of the question for you at this point in time?
Well, lockdowns don't really affect me very much. I'm an essential worker.
Right, okay.
And I have very little contact with people doing my job, so...
Okay.
Honestly, it'd be kind of better for me, because then the roads would be a lot more clear, and I could do a lot more.
All right. But, you have to think about the wider implications on society.
The wider implications,
right?
I suppose if the numbers go up, then yes, I would accept another lockdown. But to an extent, I don't at all believe in vaccine passports at all.
Okay.
Hate the idea.
There's a news conference here in Almont. I don't know if you're a Quebecer or you just happen to be in Almont right now, but the Quebec government is having an update at 3 o'clock this afternoon on its own vaccine passport program, because a lot of people are wondering what it's going to do. Okay, Matthew, a lot of road noise, so I'm going to let you go. Let's take another call here. Brockville, Ian. Good morning. Ian, you're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah.
How are you this morning?
I'm good, sir. I'm just wondering if you think the worst is over with COVID-19, or could we, be back to the bad old days come the fall and winter? What's your gut feeling right now?
My gut feeling, Rob, is that thank goodness we have now surpassed the realm of not really knowing what we're dealing, just that side of the bad side of COVID, that figuring it out, so on and so forth, variants. However, moving forward, I do think we are about to enter maybe a different tier, different area of COVID where, I do think that it's going to get interesting in the months to come.
Okay. What do you think is about to get interesting, for example? What do you mean by that? What are you thinking of there? Okay.
Okay, well, this might be the world's worst comparison, but even as a grown adult, sometimes whenever I take my antibiotic and it says to take it for the full duration, I get lazy for those last couple pills. And what happens? Sometimes we get unlucky and we get sick and we have to go get better antibiotics. So I'm concerned that the stressful part of when COVID began was just, I guess, basically the whole idea of figuring out what it was and how to deal with it. Now that the government, obviously more so us people, us common sensors, now that we have a good gist of what's going on with COVID, I think our next biggest concern is going to be just what happens with the variants. We know the gist of what they do, but just how hard they are going to hit. I think we're definitely better prepared to deal with them because we've got our 1.5, 2 years experience with COVID. But I do still think we're in for some, because it's a variant. We don't know, as the science table continually tells us.
Yeah.
It's something different about it, so we don't just know.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ian, for your call. It's greatly appreciated. You know, one of the news stories that I'd be thinking this morning, I'm not quite sure if we're done with COVID-19 just yet. Nova Scotia reimposing its isolation and testing restrictions on all travelers from New Brunswick who aren't fully vaccinated. Our sister station in Halifax has a story, News 95.7, reporting this morning, if you are not fully vaccinated and you're coming into Nova Scotia from New Brunswick, you will have to self-isolate once you get there. Now, I was at the border checkpoint between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia on my honeymoon August 11th. And if you picture it, you're on a divided highway, and then they narrow it down. They control the traffic flow down to one lane. And there's a little kind of like construction site trailer there on site. And there were two guys there, young guys, probably like summer job kind of guys, university types. And in advance of our trip to Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, we had to fill out a form. The PEI thing was called PEI Pass, and the Nova Scotia one was called the Safe Check-In Confirmation. It was quite the process, actually, to fill out the thing for Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia government wanted our driver's license. They wanted our proof of vaccination, recommended we got a test before we went there, which we didn't because we're both double vaxxed. Wanted to know where we were staying and how long we would be there and when we were leaving. So when we finally got to the border, I mean, usually there's nothing there. It's like the border. It's the New Brunswick-Nova Scotia border. Who cares? But anyway, we finally got there. The young guy takes a cursory look at this thing that I downloaded on my phone from the Nova Scotia government and then said, away you go. Away you go. It doesn't sound like that's what they're going to do from now on. It sounds like they're going back to checking everyone who goes through that provincial border and ordering people to self-isolate if they've only had one dose. And I just... you see the daily case. Do we have a daily case count for today, David? I should find out what that is for today. It was 639 yesterday, I believe. Is that a sign of things to come? You're going to see more of that. If the Delta variant gets any worse and the predictions that we're hearing about, grim fall, a grim winter, if they actually come true. BC's doing the vaccine card. Sharon in Ottawa. Sharon, good morning.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you for waiting there. Do you think the worst is over, or are you feeling anxious about what might be ahead?
The worst is over.
Okay,
I've been sort of one of the calmer people through this whole thing. I think with common sense, we probably could have done a bit better. But what my worry is at this point is not that, we're all going to, be back in our homes. I worry more that people in charge, the science table and the government, will panic because of the numbers going up and send everything back into lockdown.
Okay.
Where the problem is that they're trying to protect the people who won't be vaccinated. And that's where I get angry. And I know Dr. Fissman and a few others are very sort of doom and gloom. Like, if we come out of our basement bunker, we're all going to be killed. And they don't want to let us out until everything's gone. Well, it may never be gone. Okay. And I see how much happier people are, my kids, my grandkids, my neighbors, I see how much happier everyone is. Now that they're vaccinated, they're getting together again, they're hugging again. These people are not the ones in danger. They may get COVID, but they also may get, look what's happening at CHEO, because people have been isolated for a year and a half. All these kids are getting all these viruses.
Respiratory illnesses.
Exactly, that they have no immunity to because they haven't been out for a year and a half. Like, we need to get back to living.
Need to get back to living.
You know, with some caution.
Yes,
but we always use caution in the
like you said, common sense, right? Common sense. Yeah. Okay.
But I know there are people, and like I say, I've gotten to know a few of the names. David's
just looked up the numbers here. 82% in Ontario, 12 plus 1 dose, 75.1% 2 doses.
I think, you know what? It's not perfect, but I think it's enough to get society open again. And there are going to be people at risk, and there's going to be children at risk until they can get, the younger children, until they can get vaccinated, and I've got my fingers crossed that will be soon. But I think we can't shut down society again to protect the people who won't be vaccinated.
Yeah. David says, David's just typing me out some numbers here from today. 108, this is Ontario-wide, we have 156 COVID patients in Ontario ICU. But 149 are not fully vaccinated or have an unknown vaccinated status.
Exactly.
Of the 156 that are in ICU, 7 are fully vaccinated.
So if I own a business, why should I be forced, again,
a very
to shut
good
down
point.
my business? Because, and I'm not saying those people deserve to be sick. I would never do that. But they have made a choice, a lot of them. And sadly, it was a bad choice. And so you can't, it's like during flu season, and I'm not saying the flu is as bad, but during flu season, do we shut down the city because a lot of people won't get the flu shot and end up getting the flu? No, we don't.
Okay.
We ask them to stay home, we ask them to get the flu shot, and we try and avoid them if we know they have it. So
and in fact, almost just about every doctor, scientist that I have had on points out that these COVID vaccines are actually much more effective at preventing COVID than the annual flu shot is at preventing the annual seasonal flu.
Exactly.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I think my point is the thinking has to change. I was okay with lockdowns initially. They served their purpose. Mm-hmm. But I think even this year earlier, they in a way ceased to serve their purpose.
Okay.
Because as we're getting more and more people vaccinated, we need to get our country going again. We don't need to be a New Zealand or an Australia where one case comes in and boom, we're shut down.
They shut
again.
the whole country down. Yeah, they have 30 cases now, the Prime Minister in New Zealand, she just extended the lockdown. 30 cases in a country of 5 million people. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, Sharon, I got to go, Sharon. Thank you. Thanks, great
Rob.
call. Yeah, bye-bye. So a few lines available there. Wait won't be too long. We'll be back with the final quarter Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour. This is City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022 for in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on our work, that's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Talking about COVID-19 fourth wave, Delta variant. And is the worst over? Or could we be going back to the bad old days? Dr. Bonnie Henry in British Columbia. This is the Vancouver Sun this morning. Listen to this. This is very interesting and very important. Quote, BC is implementing wide-reaching rules requiring citizens to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination through a new BC vaccine card to get into non-essential businesses and events such as sporting events, nightclubs, restaurants, and movies. Starting September 13th, British Columbians 12 years and older will need to provide proof of at least one dose of vaccine to enter such discretionary events and businesses, and by October 24th, only fully vaccinated people will be permitted entry. British Columbians will be able to get their proof of vaccination through a yet-to-be-launched website by entering their name, birthday, personal health number, yada, yada. The proof of vaccination can then be saved to a smartphone to show along with photo ID when entering a business or event. And it will be required to enter sporting events, concerts, theater, dance, symphony events, restaurants, both indoor and patio dining, nightclubs, casinos, movie theaters, fitness centers, gyms, businesses offering indoor high-intensity group exercise activities. So, David, we have no fear of ever being affected by this in any way.
No, we're in the clear on that one.
Organized indoor events such as weddings, parties, conferences, meetings, or workshops, discretionary organized indoor groups, recreational classes, activities. Under the new policy, proof of vaccination will not be required to provide essential services such as grocery stores, transit, pharmacies, and medical facilities. That is about as rigid as any province's regulations so far, the so-called BC vaccine card. Going to a restaurant, show the card. Mandatory. And make no mistake, pressure's building on Premier Ford here in Ontario to have the same kind of policy, an Ontario vaccine card. Okay. Didn't take long. Once this news came out of BC yesterday, it didn't take long for people on social media to start saying, Doug Ford should be doing the same thing here in Ontario. Show the card or you're not getting in. That's your punishment for not being vaccinated. The consequence for not being vaccinated. Quebec is supposed to have a vaccine passport by September 1st. Nobody has the foggiest idea what Legault is doing there, where they get this vaccine card, what it allows them to do. Their government is supposed to have a news conference this afternoon for my friends on the Quebec side. Rodney. Yeah, Rodney. Go ahead, Rodney.
Hey, good morning.
Do you think the worst is over with the pandemic, Rodney, or are you anxious about a fourth wave? Do you think we could be going back to the bad old days?
I don't know the answer to all those.
Don't know the answer,
but
Rodney.
I do know the COVID story is not over. And
not over, no.
Ongoing, for a long period of time. And then before my few comments or thought frames, I'm just going to flip back to one of your other callers to just sort of give more information. It was an observation that I sort of made, and it's to do with Mark and the border being opening in 2 weeks, and you have people from...
Oh, yes, yeah, okay.
And the important thing is...
You think that's why cases might be higher? Or?
Well, I'm going to get to the important loophole in that, is people have to be double vaccinated.
Right, okay.
How about the children under 12 that are coming up to their cottage that's up in Canada?
Okay, all right.
Okay, and then what do children do? They play with other children.
Right, okay.
So, hey, that would be one part. Common sense would be another whole topic of conversation. Your previous caller talked about it's going to be my observation since people have been vaccinated, they're following the suggested guidelines less. And it's not only my observation.
You think we've become a little lax?
Very much so. And even,
very much lax. Okay.
Even in a store, like a manager that I spoke to, that was what we ended up speaking about,
Okay, interesting, Rodney. Interesting. Okay. Rodney, I'm just going to let you go. You already called this week, which was just yesterday, and I've got full phone lines, but you call later in the week if you want. Greg, Ottawa, you're on City News. Greg.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, do you think the worst is over, or are you dreading the fall and winter?
I think the worst is over.
I think the worst is over, okay.
Well, just based on the fact that in March 2020 we had no idea what we were dealing with, and we were told if we went near our parents that we might kill them, and I believe that fear has mainly dissipated, and we have vaccines. So I do believe that the worst is over. In terms of fearing the fourth wave, I mean, they're already sort of massaging that into us as we speak, so they're prepping us for it. But in terms of accepting a lockdown, I mean, it's hard. I wouldn't accept it. I mean, I don't know what I could do about it. I think we've been told for months and months that vaccines were our way out, correct?
Yes.
Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, many politicians and health officials told us that vaccines were our way out. So if the vaccines were our way out, we have the vaccines.
Let's get out.
I believe David just told me that 75% in Canada are double dose.
Double dose, yeah.
So I don't know how you could accept going into another lockdown, closing schools, closing businesses. I mean, let's just assume maybe by October we hit the 85% double dosed. I don't know how anyone could accept it, because if it's not the answer, then what's the answer?
What's the answer?
It's perpetual lockdown, inevitably, and it's wearing masks forever, and it's shutting schools down and affecting children, affecting people's mental health. It makes no sense to have these approved vaccines inoculate everybody with 2, likely 3.
And then go back to lockdowns and stay-at-home orders and takeout only and curbside pickup and all of this other stuff.
How could you do that to society, and how could the majority of society say, yes, I'll accept, you've hit me with 2 doses, I'm going to get my 3rd dose, and Doug Ford's going to wake up and tell me to stay home again today. Like, I couldn't accept it, and I don't know how anyone that, like Sharon said, with common sense, could possibly accept it.
All right, Greg. Thank you. Thank you for your call. Steve in Ottawa, you're on City News. Steve.
How are you?
Steve, do you think the worst is over, or are you fearing what's to come?
No, I don't think the worst is over. I think
okay.
It's funny to me that your previous caller was a liberal voter, and he wanted us to be more like China and Russia. That kind of made me laugh. But,
if it works in the Soviet Union and it works in China, we should be doing it here.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
hard pass. I'll take a pass on that.
I'm more concerned about this mandatory stuff. Like, I think everyone's got to chill out on the mandatory stuff a little bit, because
Like, where do you want to go with it? Do you want to start breaking down people's doors, taking away their kids? Well, you're a risk to the children because you don't want to get vaccinated. Or do you want to, you want police officers going around with a list of people's names, shooting darts at them? Like, where's it going to end? It's going to go to a dark place. You know what I mean? So, like, I think everyone's got to chill out on the mandatory stuff and the fleeing game a little
All right, Steve, lay off the tinfoil. How much tinfoil did you buy at the grocery store on the weekend, Steve? Come on. Come on. Was it on sale? Was the Alcan on sale, Steve? Come on. Okay. I do quite enjoy his calls, though.
I picture like
I do like Steve's calls.
A big blow dart.
I do like Steve's calls, but police with blow darts, I don't know. Come on. All right, Kevin in Canada is probably the last call of the morning. Kevin, good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, Kevin.
Well, I think that, obviously we've vaccinated ourselves to the best point it can be at right now. We definitely are seeing, the hospitalizations and deaths come down significantly. I mean, I think we need to stop.
Number of deaths is up 45% in 2 weeks nationwide.
Yeah, but based on what starting number? Like, if it's a small number increase over a small number, right? It's not like we're going from hundreds of deaths. But I think the bottom line I want to say, though, is that we just need to get over it, start to live with it. I mean, we live with the flu and the cold. I mean, one thing I always think about, we have like millions of tests done over the last year, whatever. How many of those were actually positive, percent-wise? So everybody else was still sick, though. The other people still had colds and had the flu. But I never talked about that. Never talked about those any deaths out of those numbers. So I think we just need to start living with it, and keep our. I still think we can still distance and use masks if we need to, but we just stay open. Just stay open. I can't send my little one. Keep her home again for school. She has to go back to school. That kind of stuff. Right?
All right, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
And thank you for all your calls this morning during the Talkback Hour. We're back right after the 11 o'clock news with. That's a good question. I'm supposed to know the answer to those questions. Michael Taube, yes. Syndicated columnist and former Stephen Harper speechwriter Michael Taube is joining me right after the 11 o'clock news. You think I would know that? Because, he is here every Tuesday on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 24th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, under the heat warning, it's 25 degrees. It feels like 32. In Smiths Falls, 26, and it feels like 33. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. World leaders gathering virtually for their special G7 meeting on the crisis in Afghanistan as thousands continue trying to flee the country. The Taliban is drawing a line for foreign evacuations, though. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with that story.
As the G7 leaders start their discussions, a Taliban spokesman says the U.S. must complete its evacuation of people from Afghanistan by August 31st, the day the Biden administration set for the withdrawal of all American troops. The Taliban says it will accept no extensions. This will only lead to rising tensions as Canada, the U.S., and other allies try to evacuate as many as possible from the chaos. It's believed at this meeting allies will be pushing the U.S. to extend its deadline in Afghanistan in order to help remove more foreigners and Afghans who helped NATO forces. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau won't say if he'll join the push from the British and the French for that extension. He has been criticized for campaigning while this crisis is underway, and today at a stop in Hamilton was asked if he regrets calling an election on the day Kabul fell.
Every single day, we are working incredibly hard to do everything we can to get people out of Afghanistan.
Canada has promised to try to evacuate as many as 20,000 Afghans. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 11:02. Positivity rate of COVID tests has hit 3% in Ontario today. The province reporting 486 more COVID cases from just under 17,400 tests. Now, 12 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 5 of them in eastern Ontario. There are none in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark being reported today, and in Renfrew County, a data cleanup, one fewer case. There are also 2 more deaths in Ontario. That data cleanup, though, also revealed 16 more deaths that happened over 2 months ago. On the federal election campaign trail today, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is making an appeal to seniors and also working-class voters. During an announcement this morning, he promised to give priority to pensioners over companies and most other creditors during a bankruptcy or restructuring proceeding. Yesterday, O'Toole promised union representation on big company boards, saying workers have been forced to take major cuts to their pensions when their former employer goes bankrupt. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau began his day with a visit to Hamilton. He promised to help renters become homeowners and to crack down on real estate speculation. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is campaigning in Mississauga today and will make an announcement on long-term care. The township of Russell broke ground recently on a fully accessible park named in honor of Jonathan Petre. A fundraiser has been set up to help raise the money toward construction with a goal of $100,000. Mayor Pierre Leroux tells City News what Petre, who passed away in 2018, meant to the area.
He lived here and his family's here, and, you know, he just became a center point of the community when it came to awareness and fundraising events and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, he's definitely in our hearts here.
Now, the Jonathan Petre Accessible Park, which will be near the Township Sports Dome, will have an accessible play structure, swings, a boat structure, senior exercise equipment, and more. The construction is expected to be completed by the fall. City News Time 11:04, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Heat warning continues. It's another humid day. Lots of sunshine. High 32 degrees will feel like 38. Tonight, mainly clear, 19. And tomorrow, we'll start with some sunshine, then increase the cloud, showers and scattered thunderstorms after 5 o'clock tomorrow. High 33, feeling like 40. For today, the high 32.
And right now, under that heat warning, it's 25 degrees in Ottawa, feeling like 32. In Smiths Falls, 26, and it feels like 33. Ottawa police are asking for your help as they try to locate a missing 84-year-old woman. Heather Wharton was last seen this morning at about 5 o'clock in the area of Elmira Drive and Cobden in the West End. Now, Heather is described as white, 5'5", a medium build, and short gray hair. When she was last seen, she was wearing purple blouse and pants. Now, anyone who spots Heather or knows her whereabouts is asked to contact Ottawa Police. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, Troy Media, Loonie Politics, former speechwriter for Prime Minister Harper. He joins us every Tuesday. And good morning, Michael, and welcome back.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm good. What have you thought of the election campaign so far?
I'm sure that's your intro with everyone.
It may as well be, sure.
No,
yeah.
and I don't blame you. But it's different. You know, it's different than we talked about last week because the campaign had only been going for a couple days. So obviously things had really not switched or moved or shifted or nothing momentous had happened. I'd have to say certainly the first week, which I've written about for the publications you've listed, including the National Post as well, it was a very big shift in the way people are thinking about this election early on, and a very big shift in momentum for Erin O'Toole and the Conservatives. And I'm not saying that because I am a Conservative politically, which I am. It's because that's exactly what happened. You know, from the starting point, which was the infamous Willy Wonka ad, which we don't have to get into too much, which I don't think really got exactly what they had sort of hoped for, other than getting a lot of eyeballs and some media chatter on it. The Conservatives since that time, and that video has been taken down, have been really basically creating a very intelligent and focused political messaging campaign from the policy platform that they released, which has a lot of ideas that have resonated with Canadian voters in terms of, you know, strategies for the pandemic, dealing with the federal deficit, ideas such as the Canadian Investment Accelerator, which would be a 5% tax credit for any capital investment made in 2022 and 2023, tax credits for Main Street and various other things. He's used that as strategy, as well as looking at things such as discussing things such as mandatory vaccinations, where he got a bit of a bump, and an unexpected bump, where while people thought that Justin Trudeau's position, where he was really pushing for mandatory vaccination for public healthcare, for public federal workers and others, most people thought that he would get a huge bump and a rise from it, but he didn't at all, because in kind of an extraordinary development, the big PSAC, the largest public sector union, actually took a position that was relatively similar to Erin O'Toole's, which is that, yes, Canadians should be vaccinated, but they're not going to force it. And PSAC, for their own workers, actually it takes a position.
In fact, Michael, if I could just interrupt there, Trudeau was back on that today in a big way at his event. He did a morning event in Hamilton today. It was supposed to be about housing. But for some reason, he's pivoted back to this issue of mandatory vaccines. O'Toole is reckless. O'Toole doesn't get it. He mentioned that. I'm going to play the clip. This is from Hamilton this morning. Justin Trudeau.
And on vaccines, let's be clear. What Erin O'Toole is planning is just wrong.
Just wrong.
If premiers and mayors and business owners and families and sports teams and universities, if they all know why vaccines matter, if they all get it, so why doesn't Erin O'Toole?
Okay. All right. They all get it. Why doesn't Erin O'Toole? He pivoted back to that today. Very interesting. So
well,
he thinks it's a winner for him, obviously. So.
He does, but unfortunately, I think what we found this first week is a lot of things that they believe are winners for them, to use your term, are turning out not to be, at least for the early part of this campaign. And I'm not surprised that he shifted. Unfortunately, he has had to pivot on a number of different things. He had to pivot on the position with the Taliban in Afghanistan last week as well, which was something else that worked to Erin O'Toole's advantage, because he put out a release directly stating that Canada would not recognize a Taliban-led government in Afghanistan, which is logical because the Taliban is a terrorist organization. You can't deal with them, you can't work with them, and that should be the position that any Western democracy takes. And then after, a lot of criticism that Mr. Trudeau faced, and even his Foreign Affairs Minister, Marc Garneau, faced during a CBC interview where they said that the Liberals were going to take a wait-and-see approach with the Taliban, again, he had to pivot and change his position because people were coming after him and attacking him. I think what Trudeau's going to find with the clip that you just played is that the unions are going to say that we may not agree with Erin O'Toole on a lot of separate issues, but when it comes to things like vaccinations and otherwise, we tend to take a position which is similar.
Interesting. And we know Treasury Board was working on a policy very similar to what Aaron O'Toole's policy was.
Right.
Okay, so let's move along. Let's move along to the Twitter debacle of the week, which is the manipulated media controversy as previewed by Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and now Liberal candidate asking for your vote. We have another clip here. Chrystia Freeland.
I think the Conservatives would have provided the support to individuals and to businesses that we did. Do you think they would have bought the vaccines that we did? No. I don't think so. And so it really, really matters. And it matters for the future. We put out, I think we put this out already. If not, you guys are going to get the scoop on the rest of the country. But we tweeted out some video of Aaron O'Toole during the Conservative leadership campaign where he talks about privatizing Medicare. Can you believe that?
Can you believe that?
Oh my
God. Because it's not believable. It's fake news. You made it up. You made it up. You know, it reminds me, there was you remember the Liberal ad, Stephen Harper, The Hidden Agenda. And at the end it said, "We did not make this up." And it's kind of like yeah, you did. You totally made it up. Actually, you made it up. And they got slapped with a manipulated media warning by Twitter. What do you think about that,
Yeah,
Michael?
well, it really shows that, you think you can get away with certain things, but you can't. And that's Twitter putting it directly on that video. So that stays there. It stays in place. And no matter how much Chrystia Freeland and other Liberals, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, talk about it, it's not going to work to their advantage because that label sticks. And look, I talked about it actually in my Troy Media syndicated column. And very briefly, the clip that Ms. Freeland put out was 35 seconds of, again, using Twitter's line, a manipulated video where the whole message was not produced properly, which led Kate Harrison, of Consumer Strategies Canada, who was the person who asked the question to Mr. O'Toole last July. She came back and reproduced the entire answer, which was about 3 minutes and 14 seconds in length, which includes the fact that, yes, Mr. O'Toole does believe in bringing, creating public-private synergies and private health care, but at the same time, it's directly stated in there that he believes in universal health care as well, which means that he wants to balance the two things out. Or to quote it directly, Aaron O'Toole said that Canada needs to, quote, make sure that universal access remains paramount, unquote. Rob, he said that position for years. He's made it clear for years. Even if you don't know everything that Aaron O'Toole has said and done within your own little Rolodex, that those lines have been out there for quite some time. So the Liberals tried to play a little game of, a little shell game and tried to see if they could get away with it. Well, they failed miserably. Now, the irony is that Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, when he was asked yesterday about this manipulated video, he still claimed that, oh, no, the Liberals released the video in its entirety. 35 seconds versus 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Where do you think the entirety is?
Yeah, they doubled down on it. No, Aaron O'Toole wants to privatize your health care. So Aaron O'Toole, within the hour, he did his own event today. His focus was on pensions today.
Okay.
He responded to this and really went after Justin Trudeau and some of the rhetoric that Justin Trudeau's been saying about O'Toole's stance on health care. Let's listen to this here.
I would like to make a statement with respect to the Prime Minister's ongoing misleading campaign on healthcare and his attacks on provinces. A Prime Minister who was serious about healthcare wouldn't have called an election during a national health emergency. And now, unbelievably, he's threatening to cut healthcare funding and close health clinics in the middle of a pandemic. I knew Justin Trudeau was desperate to win his majority, but I never believed he would compromise people's health to get it.
Yeah, he's talking about MRI clinics in Saskatchewan where they have
That's right.
Private model, as they've had in Quebec for years as well.
Yeah.
So, right, yeah.
And we have private models in Ontario as well. The Shouldice Clinic.
Shouldice, yeah,
Ontario,
sure.
Far away from me.
Yeah.
You know, very quickly, Rob, it is just a whole bunch of hogwash that has been said over and over again that Canada only has public health care. We have had private providers helping for MRIs and diagnostic procedures, not for days, not for weeks, not for months, not for years, for decades. And Canadians have to wake up to this reality. Some of them know it and obviously ignore it, but most of them basically believe that, you know, because of the Canada Health Act and otherwise, we can't consider other options. And yes, the Canada Health Act definitely restricts in many different ways, other than things that have been grandfathered, like the Shouldice Clinic or even Homewood in Guelph, Ontario. There are several that are like that. But what basically Erin O'Toole is suggesting is that we can't just look at one older model that was created, yes, by a conservative government, the PC government under Richard B. Bennett, R.B. Bennett, in the 1930s. We have to be realistic and continue to defend universal health care, which is a right that most Canadians appreciate, but also allow for more private providers for diagnostic procedures, as you said, in Saskatchewan or otherwise, which actually Mr. O'Toole even talked about from the previous thing we were discussing in his July interview with Kate Harrison, you know, saying that it was a brilliant concept overall because it showed that people, you know, all people would be able to be aided by the diagnostic procedures that were privately funded and that wait times would be brought down for everyone. That's what then Premier Brad Wall in Saskatchewan was saying, and that's what Scott Moe is still saying to this day. Those are things that, you know, the Liberals keep trying to do their little magic act and claim that that's, you know, that Conservatives are trying to change the world, change the system. It's typical fear-mongering that they've used in previous elections. And guess what, Rob? It doesn't work.
Michael Taube, great to hear from you today.
My pleasure.
Thanks again.
Speak to you soon.
You too. Syndicated columnist, Troy Media, Loonie Politics, National Post. That's Michael Taube, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. When we come back, waiting pools. I mean, August heat wave, humidex in the mid-30s, and the city's closing waiting pools. We'll speak with the city councillor coming up next. Riley Brockington, Rob Snow Show on City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly. But it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really like compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have like from combos and to like small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, you know, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
I'm just looking up the weather on my phone here for Ottawa. 26 degrees, feels like 32. The humidity is a little less today, so that's nice, and there's a bit of a breeze as well. But 61% humidity certainly beats 100% humidity, but nevertheless feels like 32 degrees. And we have been in this heat wave. It's not supposed to break till later in the week. And 50 city waiting pools closed today. That's it. That's all for 50 city waiting pools. Riley Brockington joins me now. He's the River Ward Councillor. Good morning, Councillor. It's nice to hear from you.
Good morning, Rob. Good to hear from you as well.
First of all, why are they closing?
It's a timing issue. They normally close near the end of August. It's historically been this way. Most of the lifeguards are university students or post-secondary students who need to get ready to go back to school, some locally and others out of town, and that's basically how it's been. So this has come under review this term of council. Okay. Council has in 2021 added 11 more days to waiting pools. So there's been, I think, a good investment this year. They were open on stat holidays. They opened earlier in the season, recognizing it's been warmer. We've done the same with beaches. We've tried to put more resources to get them opened and staffed longer in the season, get the maintenance open. But we've certainly seen it this week during a heat wave that we need these pools. The outdoor waiting pools are a resource in many communities where there isn't a lot of other stuff to do for some of the families. So I want to see that investment continue. But in speaking with the general manager this morning, there really isn't the resources, the human resources that are needed to keep these going. They've pulled a number of lifeguards already, and they just can't make that work. So we're going to, promote other amenities, the beaches, the splash pads. There are outdoor deep pools that are still available, but the waiting pools are really popular and certainly the urban part of the city. And I'm certainly going into the budget year next year to look at more opportunities to offer them longer.
Now, I saw a tweet that you were willing to try and keep some waiting pools in your ward open, even if it meant using office budget resources out of your own office budget. But are you telling me the city manager said, Councillor, we just don't have the people? That's
what it comes down to it. The general manager of Parks and Rec, like I said today, have chatted a few times, and there just isn't the people resources available this late in the season. I know there are other private entities in my ward, whether it be condos or other private settings where they've struggled throughout the summer to maintain lifeguard services. Some have had to close down some days just because lifeguards weren't available. So like I said, it's more of a historical time of year where the pools and ultimately the beaches, which will close this weekend on Sunday night, close up for the season because the staffing is an issue. The people who serve as lifeguards need to go back to school.
I understand that, but I remember I was asking the mayor at the beginning of the summer, why aren't the beaches open? Because it was very hot as well. The humidex was in the 30s and the beaches weren't open, and it just wasn't time to open the beaches. you're on this schedule because of human resources. You're not on this schedule because of the weather, unfortunately. But the thing is, as well, you're part of a city council that has, declared a climate emergency. You're spending $1 billion on electric buses. We're warned every second day about how it's getting, warmer and warmer and warmer, and in Ottawa, and you could argue this summer we've certainly maybe experienced that. But it seems to me that there has to be a better solution than, in the interest of serving the residents.
Yep.
There has to be a better solution than we open this day, no matter the weather, and we close this day, no matter the weather. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, part of my offer this morning was to listen, okay, we don't have staffing for 50 waiting pools. Why don't you ask the urban councillors for 1 or 2? And maybe we can't have 100% remain open, but at least you prioritize certain neighborhoods. You invite people to come there if possible, looking for any solution. So there are other ways to keep cool, as I listed, but I do want to recognize council has put in more resources. We know beaches are popular in September. It's been warmer in the fall. We need public work staff to be there. There have been resources invested. I know this is going to be a topic this fall when we look at the budget for 2022 again, but we need people to serve in these capacities. I said, listen, we have indoor pools that have been closed since March of 2020. Where are those staff? Well, they've been put on leave. We can't call them back right away for 5 days work. But when COVID does pass and things reopen, there will be staffing struggles. We won't be able to open everything right at once because we have to get the qualified people back retrained. But waiting pools are what makes are part of the things that make communities great communities. Things to do in the summer. They're well used, and certainly want to see them. And the heat wave just underscores the need for these investments in services in our community. So I'm completely on board. I try and look at many different ways to squeeze resources to extend this service in communities. And if it can't happen this year, then council has to, like I said, focus on 2022 and get the resources that we need.
Councillor Brockington, I thank you for taking a few minutes for us this morning and explaining the issue. It's greatly appreciated.
Always a pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. That is Councillor Riley Brockington, represents River Ward. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 24th of August. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, we're under a heat warning, mainly sunny. 27 in Ottawa, 28 in Smiths Falls, the Humidex 34. Here's what's making news this hour. A special meeting of Ottawa's largest school board tonight will debate making COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for all staff who don't have medical exemptions. It's one of several motions that would also include a proposal to require kindergartners to wear masks in class and require volunteers to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. These measures would go beyond the province's requirements. The meeting scheduled to begin at 7. Ontario adds 486 new cases of COVID-19 today. 2 more people in the province have died. 12 of the new cases are in Ottawa. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit has 5. There are none in Leeds, Grenville, or Lanark counties, and a data cleanup has removed 1 case from Renfrew County's total. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in Ottawa today, promising priority for pensioners over companies and most other creditors during bankruptcy or restructuring. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau's in Hamilton, pledging to crack down on real estate speculation driving up home prices. The NDP has a long-term care announcement. As the heat warning continues, the NCC says a lack of lifeguards has closed Lac Leamy Park Beach today. Other beaches in Gatineau Park are open, and Ottawa's Britannia, Westboro, Mooney's Bay, and Petrie Island River beaches are open, but swimming is not recommended at Petrie Island East Bay. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
The opioid crisis, the latest numbers would suggest the opioid crisis is on track to kill 2,000 people just in Ontario this year. 2,000 people. 2,000 people. And there has been a lot of discussion about ways to approach the opioid crisis and potentially lower the death toll from the opioid crisis. One is the decriminalization of the possession of all hard street drugs. Okay? Decriminalization, not legalization, decriminalization. I've been covering this issue, just the addiction issue, long enough in Ottawa. I mean, I've raging debates about the opening of one supervised consumption site. Now we have 4 of them, and they're all, when we talk to people on the ground working in them, they're all very busy. We've interviewed experts from Inner City Health. There is talk of safe supply of these drugs, powerful narcotics, very addictive, highly addictive. But again, those on the front line say, hey, at least the addicted would know what they were consuming, and they would know it's not laced with fentanyl, carfentanil, whatever the case might be. That's a far cry from the days when needle exchange programs were controversial. When I first started broadcasting in Ottawa, that was the end. That was Sodom and Gomorrah to even have a needle exchange program. And then came supervised consumption rates, and they were controversial. And now clean drugs, let's offer clean drugs, decriminalization. But another is this, and I really want to focus on this right now, that as a country, we shouldn't be treating drug addiction like a criminal matter anymore, and instead treat it as a matter of public health, which is not where I don't think most people were 10 years ago, certainly not 20 years ago. That in order to really get a handle on the opioid crisis, the solutions rest within the domain of public health. It's an issue. It's a public health issue. It's not a matter for the criminal justice system. So let's discuss it some more. Gillian Kolla is with me this morning, postdoctoral research fellow, Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research at the University of Victoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
It seems to me there's been a lot of progress in how Canadians view this issue over the years. What do you think?
Well, we've certainly
definitely seen a pretty large sea change in the way that Canadians are looking at and thinking about drug use. I think that unfortunately a lot of this has been driven by the tremendous toll that the overdose crisis has taken on Canadians. There was over 6,000 people who died across Canada in last year alone. And so I think that unfortunately, this is an issue that has touched so many lives. It's touched so many families and community members. And people have realized that the way that we've been addressing drug use as a society has not been working. That having the police and the criminalization of drug use as the primary focus and the place where most of our funds go has not worked at all to reduce the rates of drug use or to reduce any of the harms that we're seeing within our communities.
Okay. So, given that is the case, and there's a greater recognition of that, what does progress look like then? Transitioning from, say, making it what has historically been a criminal justice matter into more of a public health issue?
Yeah, no, it's a really
What's
good question.
involved in that?
Well, I think what we've seen over the last few years is we've seen public health and medical officials such as Toronto's medical officer of health, British Columbia's provincial health officer. We've really seen people come around to the idea that criminalization hasn't worked and calling for decriminalization, calling for a more health and social services oriented approach to addressing drug use. And shockingly, we've also seen the police come around. Just last year, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police actually released a report also recommending the decriminalization of drug use. Which is a strong recognition that our focus on criminal justice system approaches have not been effective. And so we're starting to see that we should be investing in more community-based solutions, harm reduction measures, treatment measures that can really meet people where they're at and that can help people address when they start to have problematic patterns of substance use, rather than putting people in jail where there's no availability of treatment and there's really no way of intervening with people who might be struggling with their substance use.
Well, isn't that it? And maybe the main obstacle is the lack of treatment, right? What do you think?
Well, I think
the lack of resources put into treatment. I mean, drug use is one thing, but really the problem is drug abuse. And what happens when somebody doesn't want to abuse drugs anymore, asks for help, and is told, well, sorry, there's no help. That's the big problem, right?
Well, the lack of resources is a major issue. And what we really need to see is a strong investment in community-based, evidence-based measures to address drug use. What we need is a system so that people, when they want help, can get it immediately, and that they can have that access in a really, really low barrier way. We've unfortunately not seen a significant investment into community-based harm reduction and treatment services. And here, I just really want to nuance the conversation because I think what we really need is a continuum of options that are available to people. We need a continuum of options that can meet people where they're at. So that if people are going to continue using substances, then harm reduction resources like the supervised consumption sites that you mentioned earlier are available. Yeah. Safer supply programs is another interesting, new and innovative way of dealing with it. Mm-hmm. And we also need quick and easy access to evidence-based treatment when people want to access it. And currently that's been very, very difficult in our system.
For example, a common criticism that I hear is, well, what if we took all the money that we spend on law enforcement, or what if we took all the money that we spent on harm reduction and instead put it into treatment programs to help people so when they don't want to use drugs and they want to get clean, treatment is available for them. It seems that there's a lot of frustration over the lack of availability of drug rehab right now. What's your sense of that? You're in the field. What's your sense of it?
So again, I think that Canada is dealing with an unprecedented overdose crisis. And this is the type of situation where we don't need an either-or approach. And I really would push people to think beyond this kind of like treatment versus harm reduction or treatment versus criminalization. I think what we really need right now is we need healthy investments across the system. Like I said before, 6,000 people died across Canada last year. There's probably tens of thousands more people who are using drugs on top of that, some people might be having problematic patterns of use, but some aren't. And so I think that a focus exclusively on treatment misses out the realities of drug use. The fact that some people don't want treatment at this point, the fact that some people don't see themselves as having a problematic pattern of use that would necessitate treatment. So this is why we need a multitude of options available on the table for people so that we're not missing some groups of people. For sure, we need strong access to evidence-based treatment. But again, I mean, a lot of the treatment that we have available
I'm just curious. I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you mean evidence-based treatment? What do you mean by that? I haven't heard that before.
Yes, no, so this is a really, really interesting point. So a lot of the treatment that we have in Canada isn't actually regulated. When we're talking about treatment beds, what we actually need is treatment that is being provided by people who are licensed, who are regulated, who are putting in place evidence-based treatment methods. We have gold standards for treatment of opioid use disorder that include medications for opioid use disorder. A lot of treatment facilities that are private and are for pay don't actually allow people who have opioid use disorder who are taking medications for it to access it. And so we really need to ensure that we're giving people the best quality of treatment. It's not just that any treatment is okay. We really need to be providing evidence-based, best quality treatment for people because otherwise, unfortunately, we see people getting taken advantage of by some very unsavory treatment programs that are trying to capitalize on people's pain and the suffering that people are going through. And we need evidence-based treatment from the medical sector that really responds to people's individual needs and individual situations.
Okay. For example, I mean, you're in Toronto, and I don't want to stereotype and paint this picture of the Skid Row addict, but if somebody is abusing drugs or is in the grips of the opioid crisis and they know they're in trouble and they need help. In the city of Toronto, if somebody needed help, if somebody needed access to a treatment program or a residential treatment program, whatever the case might be, what kind of weight are they looking at right now for a program like that?
No, and I mean, I think one of the issues that we're seeing across the system right now is that wait times and wait lists were very large prior to COVID.
Yeah.
And then the restrictions that came about with COVID, which were very necessary to reduce the spread of the illness, unfortunately made it so that many programs had to put in place distancing measures, had to cut back on the number of beds available, and this led to an increased number of wait lists.
So the problem's gotten worse because of COVID, right?
In many ways, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that we're kind of seeing this across the whole health system right now. We've had an underfunded health system for quite some time, and COVID has really exposed the major issues with that. We need fundamental reinvestment across our entire health system, but particularly within our mental health and our substance use treatments. This is a place where we really do need critical investments in the evidence-based measures that have been proven in research to really be able to help people, as well as some of the more innovative measures that meet people where they're at in the community. A lot of people benefit really, really greatly from community-based treatments and supports. And so we shouldn't neglect that either. Not everybody needs a treatment bed. Not everybody needs a facility. Some people just need community-based treatment supports, and that can be provided in communities if we were just to invest significantly in it.
Right. Yeah, it seems to me we're having a grand debate right now because it's election time over the universality of healthcare. If you view treating drug addiction as a public health problem, you could also say, well, there's something that has tiers in it. Because let's face it, if somebody has the wherewithal, the resources, the money, the wealth, they're not waiting for treatment or help. They can be at probably a really nice drug treatment facility for 90 days and be there tomorrow and get counseling and everything else that they would ever need. Not the same for everyone else, is it? It's not universal, is it?
Well, no, and this is a major problem when we have private operators. And again, I'm not saying that all private operators are bad. Some of the private treatment facilities are very good quality. But the issue that you're bringing up is that it's not accessible for everyone. Right. And we really do need a system where everybody, regardless of their income, regardless of their ability to pay, has access to the best quality of treatment when they need it. And this is a place where we really do need to make significant investments because, unfortunately, the toll of the overdose crisis has been very, very deep across the entire country.
Okay. I thank you for your time again. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me.
Gillian Kolla, Postdoctoral Research Fellow, Canadian Institute Substance Use Research, University of Victoria, but in Toronto today. David Coletto, CEO, Abacus Data, on the polls. Coming right up. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The polls. It's like the NHL playoffs, a Canadian election campaign. It's like the NHL playoffs for pollsters. And David Coletto is back with us on City News, and he's the CEO of Abacus Data. Good morning again.
Good morning, Rob. Good to be here.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like Pola-palooza today.
Pola-palooza, yeah. Lots of data out today, that's for sure. Now, look, a lot of the polls suggest it's a tie. Your poll does not. Explain what's going on according to Abacus data.
Yeah, well, again, there's margins of error on all of this, so we should see some variation across different polling companies. But we do see the Liberals still ahead, although that gap continues to get smaller. They're ahead by 33% nationally, Conservatives at 29%, the NDP at 23%, the Bloc at 6%, the People's Party at 4%, and the Greens down to 3%. Compared to last week, really no real change. The Conservatives up 1%, the NDP up 1%, the Liberals holding steady. But I think, although our horse race numbers often get most of the attention, it's some of the other questions that we ask that I think shows that the first week of the campaign has actually been pretty good for Erin O'Toole and the Conservatives, and for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, and pretty status quo, not that great for the Liberals, who we have to remind everybody actually called this election.
Yes, they did. On the bright side, you say for the Conservatives, a more favorable view of Erin O'Toole. What goes into a favorability score? What are you asking people? Do you just ask them, hey, what do you think?
Do you like him or do you not?
Really? It's that easy? Do you like him?
Do you have a positive or negative view of these leaders? And as you said, Mr. O'Toole's numbers are up 6 points, his positive numbers, from 20% last week to 26% this week. He still has far more people who don't like him, but in the course of 1 week, to be able to move your numbers by 6 points is really significant. And it's really, I think, an indication that, I think the Conservatives had a pretty good first week. I think people are starting to tune in. They didn't really know who he was. And I think he connected with a lot of Canadians. And so he starts this week, not in a great position. He's still got work to do, but certainly in a much better position. And I think it signals that the Conservatives had, from a purely strategic perspective, a really good first week.
Okay. What are data points that stand out for the New Democrats and Mr. Singh?
Well, I think first, Mr. Singh is the most popular leader. So while Mr. O'Toole made some gains, he still is, almost 20 points behind Mr. Singh in terms of that favorability number. 42% of Canadians have a positive view of Mr. Singh, 24% negative. And that's slightly up for Mr. Singh. So he, too, is seeing some positive numbers. He also, there's a question we ask, over the course of the campaign so far, are your impressions of the leaders improving, declining, or not changing? Mr. Singh actually had, 16 points more people say their views are improving. He's what we call a momentum score. So he's doing quite well. People are impressed with what they're seeing from him. It hasn't translated into a whole bunch of new people saying, I'm going to vote NDP. But that's the first step, is people paying attention and hearing him out. I think the vulnerability for the New Democrats, though, and this is what our data really shows, is when we ask people who have a choice right now, are you locked in, or could you still change your mind before you vote?
Yeah.
Among New Democrats, more than half say they could change their mind before the end of this campaign.
More than half. Wow.
More than half. For the Liberals, it's 64. It's only 33. For Conservatives, that number is even smaller. So the Liberals and the Conservatives have much more solid bases of support. The New Democrats and the Greens much more open to changing their mind, which is, if you are a progressive voter who may not want Erin O'Toole to win, and you're starting to see polls show it's a closer race than you probably ever thought, it suggests that the Liberals, who always do this, may have a chance at convincing some of those New Democrats, hey, come on over, let's stop
Mr. Singh's a nice guy, but we all know the New Democrats aren't going to win, and if you can't stand the idea of Conservatives in government, you have to come vote for us. We're not really all that different. That'll be the pitch that they make. And they must be salivating if half of NDP support is what soft support, I guess you would say, right? So
yeah,
very
and I
interesting.
Think but the big problem still is when you ask people who do you think is going to win this election, half think the Liberals are going to win, and very few think the Conservatives are. So it's still early in the campaign. Perceptions will have to change, though, if the Liberals are going to be able to do that.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, because the debate commission's already made up his mind about the People's Party. You don't have 4% support nationwide. You can't be in the debate. What were they polling at with you guys?
We just have them at 4%. I think it was like 3.6. They asked for decimals. So someone who was helping the debate commission actually, emailed us asking for all the parties' numbers as they were doing those calculations. So
okay,
but they're at 4% nationally.
Okay, interesting. Okay. This figure, 71%, is that what the figure, time for a change? 71%, is that your number?
It is.
That sounds like a big number to me, David.
It's a big number overall, but there's a subtle, important difference. And we break it out between those who say they definitely want a change in government versus those who say change would be good, but it's not that important. And it's to still understand the dynamics of this campaign, back in 2019, more than half of people said they definitely wanted a change in government. There was an anger, there was a motivation, throw these bumps out. Today, that's at 44. So it's not low, but it's low enough that the Liberals still have a little wiggle room, right? And you have to keep in mind, even back in 2019, they didn't win the popular vote, but they still won the most seats. So yes, lots of desire for change. And I think it's frankly because while people have thought for the most part that the Liberals have done okay managing the pandemic, there's not a lot of love for Mr. Trudeau out there, right? There's far more people who say, I really don't like him, than say, I really like him. And so they are really trying to convince people that vote for us. We know we're imperfect. We know we're imperfect, but we're better than the other guys. And that's why this desire for change is something to watch. And that could go up. We're starting to see it again, inch up, that those who say they definitely want change only a few weeks ago was at 38. Today it's at 44. And as that number approaches 50 plus 50%, that's a dangerous territory for the Liberals to be in.
Thank you, David Coletto. Nice to hear from you again.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Rob. The CEO of Abacus Data, David Coletto. I'm Rob Snow, back tomorrow. Sam LaPrade Show coming up after the news on City News.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.